Training camp is just a couple of days away for the Philadelphia Eagles and football season is nearly upon us. After another masterful offseason from Howie Roseman, this team looks primed to try and recreate the success they experienced in 2017, but there's a long way to go between now and that first weekend of February, and this two-part series will break down the biggest battles that the Eagles face going into training camp. Who are the players to watch? What are the battles you need to be keeping an eye on? And what are the storylines that will be prominent throughout the next 4 weeks? My name is Liam Jenkins and you're watching Philly Sports Network. Don't forget, guys, if you're new around here and you enjoy this sort of content, make sure to leave a like and hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, drop your opinions down below. Who do you want to see at training camp? Who are the underdogs you're rooting for? Let me know in the comments. And of course, if you're not visiting phillysportsnetwork.com, that's where you can find content from myself and all of our writers at PSN. It's only right that we start off with the quarterback position and the face of the franchise. Carson Wentz signed a 4-year extension this offseason, becoming the $128 million man. Of course, the logistics of this deal mean that Wentz is signed through 2024 and is currently the highest paid quarterback in the league in terms of guaranteed money. This was a move that was simply a must for Howie Roseman this offseason, and we've already spoken plenty about that, but this is a big year for Carson Wentz. 1 year removed from what would have been an almost certain MVP award had it not been for that torn ACL, Wentz rejoined the offense in week 3 and still found a way to pass for over 3,000 yards, set a new career high in completion percentage of 69% in just 11 games, finishing in top 10 for QB rating. Many would argue that Wentz has the best chance of success he's ever had this season because of the supporting cast around him, and it's hard to really disagree with that. But this is a much bigger season for Wentz. He's got the whole Philly Voice article that lashed into his character with the help of anonymous sources from within the locker room. And now the responsibility of being the guy. There is no veteran leader to lean on. There is no QB2 that has that veteran presence to help the younger guys develop. All of that now falls on Carson Wentz. So this has to be a more selfless Carson Wentz. And whether we agree with it or not, we don't know the ins and outs of that article. And the way that Wentz agreed with some parts of it, reflected with a sense of humility and almost held his hands up, I think says a lot about his character. So I will be personally looking to see how Wentz is helping those younger guys along. Guys like Clayton Thorson and like Nate Sudfeld, and of course the chemistry he builds with the Sean Jackson, Alshon Jeffrey and the rest of the receiving corps. That brings us very nicely onto the quarterback number 2 spot, and after signing his RFA tender this offseason, Sudfeld looked to inherit that QB2 role left behind by Nick Foles. The natural conveyor belt seems to be rolling, but the question becomes, will Sudfeld make another leap in 2019 and attract attention from elsewhere? Sudfeld definitely took a leap forward in his progression last year, but as of right now, we've not really seen him in a live game situation, and that does pose some uncertainty. If, God forbid, Wentz were to go down in the heart of next season with playoffs on the line, could you lean on a player who, although did complete 43 of 74 passes for 5 tutties and 3 picks in the preseason last year, is that the guy you want to turn to? And that's where Cody Kessler comes in. Sure, Sudfeld made tremendous strides and his touch on the ball improved massively, as did his throwing mechanics. But Kessler is a guy that has started 12 games and played 17 in his career, completing 64% of passes. He's a former 3rd round pick, and sure, that was for the Browns and 2 of his wins came with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but this is a guy with starting experience and someone that is considered a fringe starter. If Sudfeld grades well against Cody Kessler, that means great things for him, maybe a sense of confidence that they can rely on Sudfeld in a clutch situation. But if he doesn't, and if Kessler beats out Sudfeld, as he's expected to do as someone of his caliber, then maybe they keep the USC standout around just for an extra season until Sudfeld's that little bit more ready. And at 25 years old, has over a season's worth of games under his belt. If he loses out to Nate Sudfeld, who has minimal game experience under his belt, it's hard to really see his career suddenly picking up in terms of a ceiling. If anything, it's going to go backward. So the pressure is really on Kessler to save his own career more than anything. And finally, there's Clayton Thorson, the Northwestern 5th round selection who comes with plenty of question marks after a wobbly campaign that saw the highest of highs and some injury lows. But at 6'4", 222 pounds, he has the size that Peterson would want in his QB, but the inconsistency on the field followed him through OTAs, and that's going to leave question marks. Could he be exposed to waivers and stashed on the practice squad? Only time will tell, but if Kessler and Sudfeld are both kept on next season, it's a wide possibility Thorson has to step up as a rookie. Onto the running back position, and we discussed this in great detail yesterday, so if you've not seen that video yet, there will be a link to it down in the description, but in case you missed it and don't have an extra 10 minutes to watch it, here's a quick synopsis. Return of Darren Sproles changes pretty much everything for anyone not named Jordan Howard or Miles Sanders. Now, there is a lot of intrigue around the PSU product, the guy that was drafted in the second round by the Eagles, because he was absent from OTAs with a hamstring injury, and that's going to set him back quite some way in terms of picking up the playbook and getting really acclimated with this team and scheme. So it'll be interesting to see how Sanders fits in. There were some glaring weaknesses in his game at PSU, like in pass protection, so will they improve during training camp? Sanders should be in line to fill that RB2 role behind Jordan Howard, who should be that bruising bell cow back, but it's behind them where it gets a little bit messy. Darren Sproles, we don't know where he's going to fit in yet. Will he resume RB3 duties as that change of pace back and a release valve in the passing game, or will he strictly be limited to a specialist return guy? I think a lot depends on A, his rehab from 2 season-ending injuries, what has seen him miss 23 games over the last 2 seasons, and B, the production of the backs behind. Corey Clement, for instance, came off a stunning rookie campaign as an undrafted free agent and just fell off, suffered injuries, ended up on IR, and battled them the entire year, setting a massive setback. So maybe we see a resurgence for Corey Clement. Wendell Smallwood, meanwhile, is on the roster bubble well and truly. His time could be running out as a Philadelphia Eagle. And the thing with his backfield is that most backs listed have a niche. Josh Adams is a bowling ball, Miles Sanders is a little bit elusive between the tackles, Boston Scott is built like Darren Sproles. Wendell Smallwood doesn't bring anything spectacular or anything specialist, he's just a jack of all trades, and that may work against him here. The only thing he's got going for him is he has developed year on year, and the coaching staff are quite high on him. Boston Scott and Josh Adams could be 2 guys left out in the dark. They've got it all to do as we get in towards preseason, but the practice squad is an option. Could the Eagles risk exposing them on waivers? That is a tough debate, because teams would surely snap them up and make them work in their system. This is a very good problem to have, but the Eagles are going to have a tough offseason figuring out A, how many running backs to carry, and B, just who those running backs are. If it's 5 running backs, it is going to be an absolute free-for-all at the tail end of that position, but again, if you want more in-depth detail, head to the video in the description for a far more detailed breakdown. Onto the offensive line, and it may not seem like there's a lot to talk about, and that's just because of how good this positional group really is. The Eagles drafted Andre Dillard out of Wazoo earlier this year in the first round, the future heir to Jason Peters' throne, which he still sits on to this day as the 5th member of an offensive line that won the Super Bowl in 2017. So every single starter from that Super Bowl winning offensive line is back on the team, and that speaks volumes for the continuity and the sustenance of success which this team has had, but it doesn't mean it's without trivia. For instance, this is the first time we're going to get to see Jordan Mailata since preseason last year, which is absolutely huge. Fans have been pining to see him. Some want to see him at running back, some want to see him at tight end, but I think more than anything, we saw just how quickly his progress came along as someone that had never played a professional game of football. By preseason week 3, he looked fairly comfortable. So what difference does a year make? We're going to find out soon enough. But many of the underrated battles here lie at interior guard. Halapoulivaati Vaitai appears to have been nudged inside, and understandably so, with Dillard and Mailata appearing to have pushed him out of the equation at tackle. Interestingly, at OTAs, he was taking first team reps over Stefan Wisniewski, who was brought back on a 1-year deal, and that man is by no means safe. Think about it, he was benched in 2018, he wanted a long-term deal before that and couldn't get it, and he comes back to the Eagles on a much cheaper deal and a part of this team. There is every chance he could be the odd man out here if the Eagles see some progress from Halapoulivaati Vaitai, and behind him, things get even more interesting. There's big dancing bear Matt Pryor, who can play just about every spot on the line but didn't play a single game last year. It'll be great to see how he's developing along. And of course, the Eagles need to find a centre behind Jason Kelce. Will it be Anthony Fabiano? Will it be Keegan Render? Or maybe, just maybe, that's where Wisniewski finds his sweet spot as someone that has previously played the position, just not quite for the Eagles. Isaac Seumalo signed a new extension, so he will be the team's starting left guard, and with Brandon Brooks out for injury, maybe up up to the first couple weeks of the season, that battle at right guard is absolutely pivotal. So watch out for names like Ryan Bates, like Suiro Peta, but it's Halapoulivaati Varta and Stefan Wisniewski who will be leading that charge to try and get themselves in the starting equation by the time week 1 rolls around. Tight end poses no real interesting battles this year. The formation is pretty much set. Zach Ertz is your tight end 1, Dallas Goedert is poised for a breakout at tight end 2, and behind them we'll see a battle between Will Tye, Richard Rodgers and Joshua Perkins. Now, Richard Rodgers was re-signed by the team in this offseason, and that is a massively underrated move. If there's one thing that defined that team during 2017, it was 13 personnel, running the ball, and getting that third tight end in space, who just so happened to be Trey Burton. If you add Richard Rodgers into the mix, who missed most of last year with injury, it means you can have a jumbo package with both Ertz and Goedert as receiving options, and that in itself is huge. Now, Josh Perkins proved little to nothing last year during his time with the team. He was actually starting over Dallas Goedert at one point in time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and did very little with it. So he's very much on the bubble. But what I'm looking for here is going to be how the Eagles use those tight ends. Are we going to see 13 personnel during preseason? Is Rodgers going to be used strictly as an inline blocker, or does he offer some receiving prowess as we saw him do a balance in Green Bay? That's going to be a nice focal point for the offense, but it's all plain sailing at tight end for now. And finally, the wide receiver position, and this one comes with plenty of intrigue. Deshaun Jackson is back in Philadelphia. He will be the wide receiver 2 moving forward, finally giving the Eagles that speed option they've craved for so long, ever since his departure in all fairness. Alshon Jeffrey remains the wide receiver 1, but the wild card in all of this, of course, is JJ Arcega-Whiteside, the Stanford product. He was drafted in the 2nd round of this year's draft and is built in a very similar vein to Jeffrey, plays a very similar style to Jeffrey as a go up and get it receiver. And where will his role lie? Will he be a big slot receiver behind Nelson Agholor, or will he go out behind Alshon Jeffrey until he gets his feet wet at the position? He shined at OTAs, it'll be interesting to see his progress, but that Nelson Agholor cap hit is what stands out here. It sits at $9 million. You have to believe the team would be open to maybe trading him and moving a slot guy inside, but then there are even more receivers beneath them who bring their own cases for promotion. Either way, Arcega-Whiteside promises to be a prominent red zone receiver, whether that's inside, outside, or all across the formation. I think we're going to see plenty of him in year 1. But for guys like Mac Hollins, who missed the entire of 2018 with a phantom injury and then underwent surgery on a sports hernia, this is a huge year. He's partnered up with Shelton Gibson, his draft mate, who actually led the NFL in preseason receiving yardage last year, but was unable to push on and really carve out a role even when the Eagles needed a deep speed threat. He caught one pass for 48 yards and it's simply not good enough. Both Hollins and Gibson have to shine because there is plenty of pressure from all angles. You've got AAF graduates like Charles Johnson and Greg Ward, who has been with the team before, and Johnson, who is in the back end of his career but has been around the NFL since 2013, and after a film room recently breaking his play down, I believe could well be a shoo-in to fill in for Nelson Agholor in slot position duties when he needs to rotate out of the game. I think he's got that potential to create some yards after the catch. He's been around the NFL a long time, he's the oldest in the room, he can mentor the younger guys, and he's got a very electric skill set, a vastly underrated one that has been hampered with injuries throughout his time in the NFL. But the intrigue doesn't stop there. There are players like Marken Michel, who was a dominant CFL standout and as versatile as they come, and of course is a brother to Patriots running back Sony Michel. When you factor special teams value into the equation, I think we could well see some shocks at wide receiver this offseason. Whether it's an underdog making the roster, or maybe a slightly bigger name slipping down the depth chart, or even being cut altogether, don't be surprised to see the unexpected by the end of preseason. But let me know what you're looking forward to seeing this training camp on offense, guys. Is it quarterback, running back, tight end, or anything else that we spoke about in today's video, or even something that maybe we've glossed over and haven't mentioned? Drop your opinions down below. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I'll see you tomorrow where we do exactly the same on the defensive side of the ball. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @LiamJenkinsPSN. I'll see you next time.